evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Highways Committee meeting today, 28th of July. Thank you to all members of the public, councillors and officers who are joining us today's meeting. Please be aware that the council is live streaming this meeting direct to our YouTube channel. I would just like to highlight some key points of the meeting. Councillors looking to speak will be invited to do so by the chair and will need to come up to the nearest microphone at the front to speak, unless your microphone is on the table. For councillors that have table microphones, the sound technician will be unmuting your microphones when you are invited to speak. If councillors have any concerns about hearing or seeing others in the meeting, please let the chair or the council officer know straight away. If anyone uses hearing aids, please make sure to connect to the hearing loop for the best audio quality. If anyone is joining the meeting via Zoom, there will be a noticeable time delay, so we must be mindful of this when interacting with them and allow them time to hear what is being said and respond. I must also run through a few key health and safety points for those physically in the meeting room. We encourage that face masks are worn at all times except when you are speaking at the microphone or have a medical exemption. The fire exits are via the main entrance that you entered the venue through or the disabled access entry point. The assembly point is on the West Down Road to the east of the building, and if you are able to, up towards the unmade section of Wilmington Road. In the venue, please limit your touching or shared surfaces as best possible, although I can confirm that tables, chairs and other such surfaces and facilities have been cleaned ahead of the meeting. Please remain seated unless you are invited up to speak or need to take a comfort break. The toilet facilities are by the main entrance doors. When moving around the room, please be mindful of keeping a comfortable distance from others. I would ask that participants looking to leave the meeting wait until the end of the agenda item and limit distractions for other participants. Voting will be done by a show of hands. Please be sure to make sure your hand is clearly lifted and keep it up until the chair has called the vote. If the meeting goes into confidential session, a short 2-minute break will be held to allow members of the public to leave and to stop the live stream feed. If members of the public present in person or via Zoom, members of the public are invited to participate in one of 3 ways: remotely via Zoom, physically in the meeting, or by submitting a written statement to be read out. For those looking to speak specifically about a planning application on the agenda, you will be invited to speak immediately before the committee considers that application. For those looking to speak on non-planning application business, you will be invited to speak during the public participation agenda item. Those members of the public looking to participate via Zoom will be invited to do so first at the relevant point of the agenda. Zoom users are reminded to keep yourself muted until you are invited to speak. The technical host will prompt when it is your turn to speak via the chat function, so please keep an eye on your Zoom chat function. Members of the public physically in the meeting room will be invited to speak next. Please raise your hand to show you wish to speak, and the chair will invite you to come to the microphone in order. Finally, a council officer will read aloud any written statements that have been submitted. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to the item of business on the agenda. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking if you do not wish to, but we ask that you clearly state which agenda item you are speaking about. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. The chair will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the Council, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this Town Council meeting. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 1, and that's apologies for absence. And I believe we got Councillor Meek, Councillor Everton, Councillor Lord and Councillor Honeyman, and Councillor Rutland is subbing for Councillor Everton. Is that correct? Thank you. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure of members of any disclosable pecuniary interest and interests other than the pecuniary interest as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. I'd just like to say that I will not be voting or making any comments on LW/21/0215 11 Bishopstone Road because I know the parents well. Thank you. Item 3, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaford Town Council policy. In accordance with Town Council policy, members of the public wishing to speak on individual planning applications may do so immediately before each planning application. And I believe we got somebody on Zoom. Is it Councillor Lambert on Zoom? Oh, right, okay, thank you. Any members of the public like to speak at this point on non-planning applications, or non-planning applications? Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 4, planning application, and this is a reconsultation on amended plans. LW/21/0278, 3 Homefield Road. It's lower ground floor and first floor in extension and demolition of existing garage and boundary wall and construction of a new garage and boundary wall. Plans amended on the 7th of July 2021. So do we have Councillor Lamberts come through first? Lambert's come through first.
Thank you very much, Councillor Borman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Councillor Borman?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much, Councillor Borman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You
Yes.
can, thank you. I remain very concerned by this application on a number of counts, and I'm wondering if the committee... Can you hear me, Councillor Borman?
Yes, I can.
I wonder if the committee are able to tell me whether or not the planning officer has made a site visit.
Myself and another councillor has been up to Homefield Road today to view the property from the street scene. Probably other councillors have done the same at another time, but I've certainly viewed the property from the street scene.
Thank you very much, Councillor Borman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can, thank you. I remain very concerned by this application on a number of counts, and I'm wondering if the committee... Can you hear me, Councillor Borman?
Yes, I can.
I wonder if the committee are able to tell me whether or not the planning officer has made a site visit.
Myself and another councillor has been up to Homefield Road today to view the property from the street scene. Probably other councillors have done the same at another time. I've certainly viewed the property from the street scene.
But not the planning officer hasn't been.
Yes, I have. A few weeks ago.
Yes, thank you. I remain very concerned by this application on a number of counts, and I'm wondering if the committee hearing council...
Yes,
I wonder if the committee are able to tell me whether or not the planning officer has made a site visit.
I can't distinguish what she's saying. Myself and another councillor has been up to Homefield Road today to view the property from the street scene. Probably other councillors have done the same at another time. I've certainly viewed the property from the street scene.
But not the planning officer hasn't been.
Councillor Lambert, are you referring to the Lewes District Council officers or our own officer? I think it's better if she types it out. George's talking out.
What, to Councillor Lambert?
Yeah.
Do I have to press that? If the question about the planning officer is about myself rather than the Lewis District Council planning officer, I visited the site at the time of the very first application, which was withdrawn some months ago. So I'm familiar with the site, and I've also looked at it again on Google Earth and looked at the illustrations of the proposed extension and the photographs of the proposed extension on the website.
And do we know if the Lewis District Officer has been?
I'm not aware the Lewis District Officer has been, but the Design and Conservation Officer has certainly, I think, probably, as she's just reported on the application, she would probably have been to see the site herself. That's a Design and Conservation Consultants report from the council, which has just been posted on the Lewis District Council's website, on the application site.
Okay, can we move on now? Thank you. So, any members of the public like to speak on this application? Can I invite you to the microphone, please?
Silence.
I won't take us long. Do I have to state the LW number, or we all know what we're talking about?
Yes, you're speaking on this 300.
Speaking on behalf of LW 210278. Good evening, Madam Chair and councillors. My name is Sue Baker, and last month I stood here and you listened to me objecting to this planning application. You all voted unanimously to object. I'm here again with my husband to tell you that nothing has since been added or removed from these plans which alters our objection. I spoke last month about Easmore House would become an overbearing building, totally out of character with itself and the area, so I won't repeat what I've already said in our objections. I would like to correct what has been previously wrongly stated in these plans, that the conservation area ends at Blatchington Hill. It does not. It actually runs up Homefield Road to the frontage of Easmore House, before cutting across to join the boundary with our home at number 4. Everything that will be built will be in full view of the conservation area. This area has many characterful properties, homes that blend together because of the established spacing in between them. This is an interesting mix, making a special contribution to this corner of Seaford. Yet nowhere in this planning application will you find a single drawing that shows how Easmore House actually relates to these homes or the immediate area. There is a serious lack of awareness and sensitivity towards adjacent homes and this special area of East Blatchington. This is why so many people are upset by these plans. I know councillors will be guided by the policy when assessing these proposals. Therefore, I would like to respectfully remind councillors that Seaford Neighbourhood Plan contains the Seaford Design Guidelines, which includes policy, which is supposed to protect us all from inappropriate and harmful development. Seaford Policy GBO3 states that two-storey extensions must be subservient to the main building. This is not the case here. Whilst ridge height is not the only determining factor of subservience, it should be noted that the whole huge side extension, as well as frontage alterations, will be seen very clearly from the road. We therefore maintain our view that the existing house will actually become subservient to the new extension. Furthermore, the turrets feature are intended to attract attention, and they will be set forward. They are not suited to Easmore House, whatever the applicant says. Page 25 of the same guideline states, extensions or alterations that create an unacceptable sense of enclosure or appear overbearing when seen from neighbouring gardens or rooms should not be permitted. This also is echoed separately in the Lewis Local Plan, Part 2, Policy DM 28, Paragraph 2. Extensions and alterations to dwellings will be permitted where the following criteria are met. The design respects and responds positively to the scale, height, site coverage, bulk, massing, and character of the adjacent properties and the wider street scene, in streets which have a definite architectural rhythm and similar style of dwelling. We also believe policy DM29 is not being met. The new placement of the proposed garage will not only tower over Star House, which is in the conservation area, but also harm the ancient flint wall it adjoins. We hope you will again decide to object to this application this evening, but in even stronger terms. Thank you for your time and listening to me.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to comment on this application? Okay. So it's open to the committee, but I'd like our planning officer to say a few words first.
I have two of the residents who are unable to attend tonight have asked me to report their objections to the committee. Firstly, Emma Lynch, the neighbour at number 5 Homefield Road, she sent me a blown up copy of the boundaries of the conservation area, which clearly shows, as the other resident has said, that the boundary of the Blatchington Hill Conservation Area runs along the boundary of the application property and Star House, number 1 Homefield Road, and then extends for a short distance along the front boundary wall of Easmore House before going across the road to the property of the objector who's spoken, Mrs. Sue Baker, at 4, and then back towards Blatchington Hill. So, I mean, the committee, when they objected to the application 2 meetings ago, were fully aware of the proximity of the conservation area and referred to the adverse impact on the conservation area in their objection. But this obviously makes it quite clear where the boundary of the conservation area lies. The plans that are readily available on conservation areas in local plans aren't clear as to where exactly the boundary lies because of the scale and the quality of printing of the plans, unfortunately. But Emma Lynch's blown up copy of the plan, which she circulated, quite clearly shows that the boundary is contiguous to your application property. The other resident who's asked me to report his objection is Rodney Castleton, Blatchington Hill, who has a keen interest in local history and architecture and is a close neighbour of the site or lives in the locality. His points are that the design is completely out of keeping with the historical context of the original house, which was built in 1903. It's clearly an Edwardian house. It's over-dominant and not in scale or character with any of the surrounding properties. it will have a harmful impact on the conservation area and particularly on the privacy of the occupants of number 5, Homefield Road, through overlooking, and the excavations necessary to implement the scheme could undermine the neighbouring properties because of the extent of the excavations involved in the scheme and the nature of the soil in that area. So those are the points that he wanted to emphasise. Finally, as I mentioned briefly earlier, the council have consulted a design and conservation consultant for a specialist response on the plans. She has reported and has recommended a firm refusal of the application. The report was posted on the website yesterday, and her conclusions are that the considerable size of the extension, both in mass and scale, detracts from the historic context of a residential property within a semi-urbanised setting, instead suggesting a grandeur associated with a rural manner. It is therefore considered that the proposals would have an overbearing impact on the street scene and thus, in the wider context, the setting of the East Blatchington Conservation Area. This is just really confirmed reservations about the property, in that it appears to be that if it was set in a few acres in the countryside, it might be regarded as acceptable, but not in the semi-urban character of Homefield Road. I mean, it has a relatively low density, but even in an urban setting of low density, it's still completely inappropriate and out of context. So that's all the comments I have. Thanks.
Thank you. So it's open to the committee. Who likes? Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, looking at the amended design and access statement that the applicant put up, I actually stand by my comments with regard to the architecture. This is a pure Georgian building. The property in Sutton Avenue that he posted a photo of might have been built in Georgian times, but it's full of Victorian features. So this doesn't add any benefit, this extension, to a pure Georgian building by adding Victorian features. So I stand by my comments from the last meeting. The other thing that we didn't really comment on last time, but in the amended plans, the garage has moved, and you can see where it's moved to. It sits right along the side flint wall, which will be, I would assume, a historic flint wall. And we've previously turned down applications for building right up against the flint wall because then you would not be able to maintain it in the future. So that would be another objection to go along for the garage. And also, if you look at the garages along the street, they're all set alongside the houses. They're now proposing that this is set so far forward and obviously right on the front boundary of the conservation area. So, I stand by the committee's objections and would like to add those objections to our previous ones as well. Thank you.
That's your proposal. Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would you like to make any further comments? No. Can you? Sorry.
I just don't think there was any fundamental change from last time. It's sort of papering over some cracks, but nothing like what's needed to be done.
Thank you. Any further comments? No? So, can I have a show of hands that we turn down this application on the grounds of what we said in our previous meeting and emphasise on the, now we know how prominent the garage will be to the street scene and the protection of the historic flint wall. Fine? Fine. So can I have a show of hands, please?
That's unanimous. objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And you're quite welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you want to leave now, please do so. But thank you for coming. Thank you. Bye. Planning applications received week commencing Monday the 28th of June. LW/21/0433 for the Lords. Demolition of the existing conservatory and replaced with a single-storey extension built to the same footprint and single-storey infill extension to kitchen, including associated hard and soft landscaping works. As there's no members of the public now, we just go straight through. So it's open to the committee. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Boorman.
Thank you, Chair. It's built to the same footprint. It's a slight infill, and I can't see any problems with so I can fully support this.
Thank you. And does that find a seconder? Councillor Arjun was first. Any other comments? No? So can I have a show of hands supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
LW/21/0435, 1 New Coast Guard Cottages, Buckle Drive, single-storey side extension. Open to the committee. Who would like to lead on this one? Any takers? Councillor Boorman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's quite a modest, small extension, so fully happy to support it.
Yes, thank you. And you seconding, Councillor Edson? Any comments? No. So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
That's supported unanimously, thank you.
Planning applications received week commencing Monday the 5th of July. LW/21/0396, Hindover, Alfriston Road. Semi-detached house, self-build, to existing house, Hindover, including 2-storey side extension and rebuild of the front bay, plus two garages, shared parking and repositioned crossover to both properties. Who'd like to lead on this one? Councillor Boorman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The self-build extension to the house, I don't have any issues with. It actually, I know they've tried to put in planning application for 4 houses and things previously, and actually just 1 additional house, actually fully support. My only concern is that when you have the front parking bays, actually they should be seen from the front windows, and they're now moving the garages from the side to right in front of the properties, which means, and it's for security reasons, that this is in the local plan, and I think it's in the National Planning Policy Framework, possibly, that actually garages should be off to the sides and not actually in front, so parking bays out the front can be seen from the house. So that's my only cause for concern.
That's partly down to the lie of the land, isn't it? Because it's rising land. Is it also partly to the fact that they've moved the access away from the junction with Old Nursery Close, which is a sort of safety feature? So there's reasons why. But it's a point. It's a point worth making, but I don't think it's sort of fatal. But if you want to mention that as a sort of slight concern, if you're moving support, but then that's at least it flags it up in the officer's mind and shows that we're thinking about the different aspects of it. So, as I say, it's worth mentioning.
Would you like to do that, Councillor Warren?
Yeah, I'll support the house. I do have a concern with the garages, so
Okay.
if we bring it up, and let's see what the officers say.
Okay. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Argent, would you like to speak on this, or? Thank you. And anybody else like to speak on this one? I would make a comment that when I first looked at this plan, I thought it was a vast improvement on previous plans, and I think we'll end up with an attractive looking building with a little bit of character to it. So I'm supportive of this application, and I'm quite happy, with Councillor Borman's comments. So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application with the query mark over the garages?
That's supported unanimously with that additional comment.
Thank you. Planning applications received commencing Monday the 12th of July. LW/21/0379, 9 Headland Avenue, replacement conservatory to the rear. Anybody like to comment on this application? I think it's just a straightforward application. So I'll propose it. Thank you, Councillor Borman. And can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
Thank you. That's supported unanimously.
LW/21/0552, 9 Links Road, erection of a single-storey side extension. Is somebody going to come up to the microphone? Come on, Councillor Edson.
Chair, I didn't notice too many documents with this to form a real opinion. I don't know how you feel about that, but I couldn't make my mind up on this one. So, how the committee feels about it, but I didn't think there was much there to give us much idea. So,
To the rear. Are you going to look it up? Yeah, I thought it was all right.
Yeah, so did I. I think...
Councillor Boardman?
In some ways I do agree. There wasn't many documents compared to when you open up other applications. You might find 6, 7, 8 plus, whereas there was, 2, I think. But the boundary goes right up to their boundary wall, to their boundary
I think
line.
that's the next one, isn't it? Links Road.
No, it's this one.
That's what we're on.
No, we're on Headland Avenue. Oh, we've gone down that one. Oh, yeah,
We're on
sorry.
Links Road.
Links Road.
It goes right up to their boundary line.
Yes, sorry. I've not
And-
crossed it off on there. Yes.
And
Yes,
that's my issue with it,
Yeah.
that it go, and because the other property is quite close to that, so. But I can't find anything else to object to it though.
Yeah, it's true. Firstly, on Councillor Edson's point, it's true to say that there aren't many documents on there, but all the essential details are sort of squeezed onto the 2 plans. Might not be so easy to decipher as other submissions, but all the essential information is on those 2 documents. I've just got those in front of me. I'm just turning to them to get the point about the boundary. I think, yes, I did notice that the extension would be up against the boundary, but so is the house. It's an extension that the house is right up against the boundary as it stands. The extension will just continue the line of the house along the boundary. And while that should always be, considered carefully, in this case, it seemed to me that it wouldn't protrude back far enough to be a concern for the neighbour. But, you know, as I say, it was a point that I noted, and so it's open to you to make the point or express your concern over that if in your response. But you know, as I said, it didn't appear for me to be a crucial factor, you know, as far as raising an objection is concerned. Just trying to turn to it now. It's relatively modest, as I say, but yes, it does come right up to the boundary of the property.
Applications have been passed before where
Yeah.
they've been right on the boundary
Yeah.
like that, haven't they?
Yes, it's up to you, as I say. It's really up to members. It doesn't protrude that far. You could object, or you can just express a concern that you know that it's right up against the boundary, therefore could have a adverse impact on the neighbouring property. But the neighbouring property hasn't objected so far. The consultation period probably hasn't expired.
Can we say that we don't not support it, but we don't object to it? That we're just...
Yeah, it's...
I always think it's the maintenance. You have to access the neighbouring property to maintain it.
Yeah. Yes. It's the neighbouring property is single storey. We've just been looking at Google Earth. Yes, and yes, it is close to the boundary, as you say, and I think I'm getting confused with another of the extension applications that we've been looking at, where the house was right up against the boundary in the first place. Now this is slightly different. So yes, it could be said to have an adverse impact on number 7, because that is single storey. So anything that close to it will be significant. So yes, I was getting confused, as I say, with another application. But looking at the plans, it is a matter of concern. So it's up to you to take it forward, really.
What would you like to do?
Object.
Okay.
Because it's up to the boundary line, it could be seen as overbearing on the neighbours. But then if Lewis do seek to allow it, can we actually have something said with regards to the maintenance of that side wall would not be left to the neighbours?
Well, yes, I mean, that would be for them to sort out. It's a bit like when you need a party wall agreement, really, when you do this sort of thing, which is a separate issue, which really comes under the building regulation area more than the planning area. Where you're building right up to the boundary, then you need to call in a surveyor to do a schedule of condition of the boundary wall, so that the blame for any damage it goes to the right area. So yes, that will be flagged up to anyone who gets planning permission for development going up to the boundary, even loft conversions of semi-detached houses and things like that. So yes, it is worth, well, you've got the choice of either raising an objection or raising a concern. Raising an objection on the basis that it should be refused because of the impact on number 7 and the fact that it goes right up to the boundary, and the complications that could arise from that. Or you could say, although it's a relatively modest extension, you are concerned that it could have an adverse impact on number 7. Although it's relatively modest, and might not be worthy of a formal objection. So it's a question of whether you want to, as I say, go halfway to an objection or the whole way. But I don't see any harm in either approach, really, because you've got justification for it on the plans before you.
Just be the gap. I mean, there would be no issue, would there?
And looking at Google Earth, the gap does contribute to the street scene as well, and it will be completely filled in, and gaps are even small gaps are very important in street scenes, and having this one filled in, could be said to have an adverse impact, as opposed to just putting, it'd be easier to put something on the back in level with the boundary wall than actually fill in that gap. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah. They have alternative sites for an extension, which won't have the impact.
Want to object? You mentioned overbearing to the neighbour. What else would you like to say? Anything about the maintenance?
Yeah, I think we should.
Difficulty of maintenance, closing the gap, and impact on neighbouring single-storey house.
Yeah.
And the street scene.
Yeah, street scene by closing the gap. Yeah. I mean, they're all valid points. Sometimes they're taken up, sometimes they're not. But if you're concerned, then they're sort of well based on planning considerations.
Okay. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Payne? And can I have a show of hands of objecting on this application?
Right, thank you. That's unanimous.
LW/21/0215, 11 Bishopstone Road, Bishopstone. Change of use from dwelling C3 to holiday let C1. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. It's a shame to lose a dwelling to a holiday let, but we do need holiday accommodation in this area. We do have a lack of hotels and accommodation, so I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Argent. Any comments? Further comments? No? So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
1, 2, 3 in support.
Those against?
1, 2. So it's carried. Support resolution carried by 3 votes to 2.
Thank you.
One abstention.
Moving on to agenda item 5 on page 8, the Lewis local plan, issues and options. I'd like to thank our planning officer for this report, which I'm sure has helped members. So, to present the committee with details of the open consultation regarding the Lewis local plan, issues and options document, and seek the committee's comments for forwarding to full council for final response to the consultation to be agreed. I mean, if you have looked at these local plan with the questions and answers, I think it's agree with our officer that it's easy reading and well set out report. Thank you. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a few comments from going through it. I do think that more need needs to be given to neighbourhood plans when they do their local plan. So this is where residents have already voted for what they wanted seen. They've seen what the guidelines are, the design guidelines. This is what they voted for. And I think the local plan should really take more consideration of the local plans that residents have already require. With regards to housing, obviously the towns like Peacehaven, Newhaven and Seaford, we're surrounded by the South Downs, we're surrounded by the sea. We've used most of our brownfield sites in Seaford. We've got nowhere to go. What are they wanting us to do? Knock down houses and build flats to go up? Because that's the only place we're going to be. Or we're going to have to lose our green spaces, which we have protected in our neighbourhood plan. So when it comes to where's this housing going, Newhaven's similar, Peacehaven's similar, and then the A259 can't cope really with the amount of traffic that's on it, let alone building more houses. I think it will be having to go to the villages and maybe build a new village or small town out in the rural areas to get any housing requirement, because the Lewis District has the South Downs National Park straight through the middle of it. They're my comments for now.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any further comments to put forward? Councillor Edson.
I was at that meeting the other day, and you could tell that the outlying councillors were very worried about their areas and what's going to happen to them, because they've got the room and we haven't. We just haven't got it in Seaford, and Lewis are struggling where they're doubled up on the amount of houses that they want them to build, and I don't think we can achieve it. And I think what's going to happen is that developers will move in under these new planning laws, and some of these areas that, villages are now going to be threatened, and the infrastructures are not there either. We've got to have transport, schools, etc., etc. And I just think this is just too much, and we should resist it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shall I just mention the timetable for considering our response to the plan? This is really just an introductory report to the plan, which only was published, the document was only published a few weeks ago. The consultation period extends to September the 3rd, and there's a full council, as mentioned, on the 25th of August. The comments that have been made already, and any further comments, I will report on to full council. So there'll be a report with the agenda for full council going out on the 11th of August, ready for the 25th of August meeting, when all councillors will have an opportunity to input their views. That obviously gives more time for members to read the document. I do urge you to read the document, because it covers quite a few important issues which I wasn't able to include in the report, particularly about climate change, energy efficiency, etc., etc., and other very important issues, and it sets out the questions that have to be answered, if you like, to give the District Council an idea of what issues it should concentrate on. And so I'd urge members to go through the document. As the Chair has said, it's unlike a lot of local planning documents issued by the government or the District Council, is relatively reader-friendly and split into very it's split into 10 or 12 different very brief sections, which are all important. And I'd urge you to look at the document and go through the questions, because they're the questions that will need to be answered before we send a formal response into Lewis early in September. So as I say, it gives us time to digest the document and for members to pick out the questions that are important to them and say how they should be answered, and have a full debate at the meeting on the 25th of August.
Shall we alter the recommendation to have any further comments by the 11th of August?
Yes, yeah, it'd be helpful if members have comments that they want me to flag up in the report to full council, which come to mind over the next 2 weeks, rather than this meeting. They can pass them to me, and I can sort of highlight them in the report as a sort of discussion points for full council on the 25th of August. Yes.
Okay. Has anybody got any further comments? Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just suddenly thought, with regards to sort of the climate change biodiversity, they were talking about whether applications should grow trees, or should they do like food areas for growing food and things. One thing I think that actually is, when a block of flats is built, they should actually have a roof garden. Because especially when you take down a house and you're building a block of flats, you're going to lose the garden because the rest of it's parking. So actually, if they have a roof garden, people can grow things. It's good for mental health and well-being for the residents that live in the flats, and it could be their only open space that's near them. So yeah, roof gardens for all blocks of flats, I think, should be included.
I mean, I feel that there should be restricting on building on floodplains these days because of all the flooding which goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But we have got a recommendation to full comment to full council. If we can change that to forward any comments to our planning officer by the 11th of August, so it can go on the report for full council on the 25th of August. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So have I got a proposal for that? Councillor Borman, seconded by Councillor Argent, and can I have a show of hands, please?
That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 6. To update the committee on the current situation with regard to Talon Parade. This is on page 14.
Yeah, hopefully the report is self-explanatory. There's been a lot of call for action from interested residents, councillors, district and town councillors. Having spoken to the Lewis district councillors on it, I'm quite satisfied that none of the options for action that have been put forward are really suitable to follow, because there's no the compulsory purchase option, which is the main one that's been put forward, is very expensive. There's no guarantee of success, and it would be really foolhardy of Lewis District Council, in my view, to go ahead with that, just hoping that it's successful. They've opted to follow a line of keeping lines of communication open with the owners of the site and they are in touch with the owners of the site, and they're hoping to bring them round the table to discuss the ways and means of resuming work on the site. We've had communication from some interested residents residents suggested that the councillors and the local MP who have demanded action on the basis of advice from the ministry that the district council has all the powers available to it to deal with this problem. The resident criticises the MP and the councillors and feels that they've been misled by the advice from the ministry. The problem with getting advice from ministry officials is that I found in my experience it can be unreliable, as the officials giving the advice have not normally had any practical experience of actually putting these remedies into action, and it's quite easy for them to suggest something and sort of to put the ball back into the court of the district council, and so having looked at all the information available and spoken to the chief officer and the other officers at Lewes District Council who are dealing with this, I'm quite satisfied that their view that there is no easy legal remedy, that taking action just for the sake of it is not a wise approach, and to concentrate on keeping lines of communication open with the owners is the best way forward. But obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions on it, and we will also try and make sure that we get regular updates from the district council officers and report them back to committee on a regular basis.
Thank you. Does anybody want to ask any questions? Councillor Rutland, would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Do we know why the owners are dragging their feet so much? Because this must be costing them money. What's their end game? What are they hoping to achieve by dragging their feet? What's the reason for the delays?
I think it may be the lack of finance, and I think they are looking to maybe refinance, get some further finance to get to the next stage of the process. I don't know the details. I mean, there's been very little information coming from them, but I think it's a refinancing matter, and so that the district council are, as I say, are in touch with the developer's agent, as they were before the COVID lockdown. Obviously, that wasn't helpful because that automatically closed the site back in March 2020. Before then, they had a programme of works from the developers, from the owner's agent, and a list of contractors who had been engaged to carry out those works. So they got to that point, then there was the COVID lockdown, but it obviously could have resumed since, but hasn't. But I think there's some refinancing going on, but there is still, as I say, communication with the same agent who they dealt with back in 2019 and into 2020 before the lockdown in March 2020.
Would a possible route be looking at some government grants to help them? Because obviously there's lots of government money floating around to help businesses come out of the problems of COVID. Yes. And if the solution is finance, I don't know.
I've got no idea.
Just an idea.
I've got no idea whether they took advantage of any of the schemes that were on offer, but and so I can't really answer that. No, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? So we are asked to note the contents of the report. All noted? With a show of hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7. To inform the committee of the proposed road closures for Seahaven Pride on Sunday the 29th of August. All the information is in the report. Any comments on this? Councillor Payne?
Probably my lack of knowledge of that road. Exactly which part do they want closed?
It's from the Esplanade. It's an unmade road, is it? From the Esplanade up to the junction with Cliff Road.
Right. So it's basically the SCP want to turn into a beach garden. Is that the bit?
From the promenade back to the junction of Cliff.
Yeah, it's about, it's
Cliff
literally
Close.
right down the far end of the Esplanade.
Yeah. So it's actually not closing any of the Esplanade off at all.
No, it's just that road, which is an unmade road anyway, so it's not a traffic road particularly.
I thought it was that one. I just wanted to make sure.
Just a
It's the
branch
unmade
off.
road, so it shouldn't
It's
have too much
unmade
traffic
and
impact because people don't drive that way.
potholes, so it's very rarely used. So,
No, it's good to clarify that.
yeah. Any other comments? No. So can I have a proposal that
We raised no objection.
raise no objection to the road closure? Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Edson. And can I have a show of hands, please?
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
carried. Thank you unanimously.
Agenda item 8. To notify the committee of the proposed expansion of the Rampion Wind Farm. I think this is going to affect more West Sussex, isn't it, than us?
Yes, well, I think we've been consulted because we were consulted over the first phase of it, which involved turbines, as you know, from looking out to sea, sort of east of Brighton, quite a way offshore, but east of Brighton, quite visible, and with some sort of infrastructure equipment coming into Newhaven. This second phase covers quite a few extra turbines, 116 I think, but all between Brighton and Littlehampton, with the cables coming ashore at Climping, which is between Littlehampton and Bognor, and the cables will run across mostly countryside past Arundel to a substation at Bolney near Haywards Heath. So it's the second phase, and it's mostly a West Sussex phase, but so really it's more for information that's been reported, because the turbines will be visible on clear days from Seaford, and we were a consultee on the first phase several years ago.
I'm sure we will be able to see some of the new turbines, because I've just really highlighted Brighton, because the present wind farm is off Worthing, so
Oh, is it?
yeah, I just registered with that. So I think, maybe they're sort of expanding more, maybe towards France, hopefully. Any comments on this? No? So, Councillor Foreman, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It's just nice to see that it's actually been successful and that they're wanting to extend it. I was rather surprised at how far the onshore cables went, though, all the way to near Haywards Heath. But no, I think it's a great thing, and the benefit of the environment along the way as well.
Yeah. Okay. So,
there's no, presumably, resolution of no objection. We can,
Yes.
yeah.
so can I have a proposal that we don't object to this new part 2 of the Rampion farm? Thank you, Councillor Rutland. And can I have a show of hands, please?
That's carried unanimously, thank you.
Agenda item 9, to notify the committee of decisions taken by Lewes District Council on applications previously considered by the committee. I do find this is helpful to the committee, because especially when we have objected to an application and Lewis has passed it, we can then read up, why it's come to that decision, and I just feel we can learn from it. So I think this is important to this committee.
Yes, a couple of local residents have asked me to put forward their comments that they regard the failure of the admin systems, or the failure to notify us of each individual application, as we were, it was the system up to last April. They regard that as a bit of a snub to the district, to the town council, that the town council should be treated more reasonably. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't regard it as a snub, because I do think it is probably just an admin problem at the council. It's certainly a bit of a nuisance to have to rely on the monthly lists of decisions, because there's a tendency with the monthly lists for them to be added to sort of retrospectively. So if say in mid-July you're reporting on the monthly list of decisions for June, there's no guarantee that maybe in late July another few decisions won't be added to that list. So it's not totally reliable, and I'll still be pressing the District Council to restore the individual notifications of decisions that we had up till last April, because I don't see it as a problem if we are copied in to the email notification that applicants automatically get when they get the decision sent to them. I don't really see the problem with that, and that was the situation up until April. So you can see I've copied and pasted the decisions from the monthly list of May and June for Seaford, or April and May anyway, and there are 3 decisions flagged up where the District Council's decision went against our response. Firstly, 35 Carlton Road, where we objected to a large extension on the grounds of overdevelopment, and Lewes District Council overrode that objection and granted permission. In the report on that application, the officer's report, they noted the town council's objection, but they regarded, or the officer regarded, the plot as a substantial one which could bear the large extension that was proposed, and it pointed out that only with the proposed extension, only a small percentage of the whole plot was built on. I think it was about 25%. So they did not regard that as overdevelopment and disagreed with our response. The second application was where the town council objected to the amendments sought to the scheme for 127 North Way. These amendments were approved by the Lewes District Council. That members might recall that was a big battle where the applicant had gone ahead with the development and was required retrospectively to seek approval for amendments and enlargements that he'd made to the originally proposed scheme. Town Council objected because they regarded the expanded or amended scheme as harmful to the neighbour at 125 North Way. But the District Council concluded that the amendments sought to the original plans were minor in nature and acceptable in design and did not create a significant loss of amenity to the neighbour. So again, they overrode our objection. And thirdly, Elm Court, Blackshington Hill, or Blackshington Road, that was a site in the neighbourhood plan for 9 dwellings where the proposal was for a rather modern design with a flat roof, which, although it was obviously agreed residential site for 9 units in the neighbourhood plan, the committee objected because they didn't like the design and didn't think the design did enough to take into account the proximity of the conservation area, the Blackshington Hill Conservation Area. So that particular application went to committee because of the recommendation was to approve, and the town council had objected, along with a lot of other residents and organisations in the area, like the Bowls Club. They objected strongly. And the conclusion was that the council didn't consider that the development would have an unacceptable impact on the conservation area. They considered it was an efficient and sustainable use of land, and the constraints of the site, and in particular the fact that it was in a flood area, so that the development had to have a false ground floor just for parking rather than habitation, meant that it was sensible in this case to have a flat roof, or a modern design and a flat roof, to minimise the impact of the development on the surrounding area. So there were the reasons given, and it was approved at Planning Applications Committee a couple of months ago. So those are the 3 applications flagged which went against our response. So I'm quite happy to answer any other queries on the list.
Any members have got any questions, or I ask the committee to note the report. Noted. Show of hands. Thank you. So that concludes the meeting tonight at 8:18. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.